Xenoblade Chronicles 3 has been announced, and I think I may have been surprised? I don't know, maybe I would have slammed my head through my ceiling if I hadn't guessed it was coming immediately after hearing about a new direct. For comparison, I was on a spiritual high for 3 days straight when Xenoblade Definitive Edition was announced. What I'm trying to say is that I absolutely love Xenoblade Chronicles, 2 being my second favorite game after Wind Waker. Needless to say, I'm really happy the series is catching on in the fashion it is, and considering that in my opinion, every Xenoblade game has been better than the last, I have no worries about this game not living up to the hype. The game seems to be a bold new step for the series in terms of story, steering the plots of Xenoblade 1 and 2 into a single lane while continuing to ignore Xenoblade Chronicles X on the wildly beloved Wii U. While the story seems to be quite different from what we've seen before, the little gameplay shown seems to imply that it'll continue following the same formula the series has been using for over a decade now. Wow. What's been shown so far looks quite intriguing to my little baby brain, and I'm sure that I'll love it, but there are some things I specifically wish to see. Changes made to the formula, different story beats, improvements to the gameplay, whether or not Kelsey Grammer can park my car, yeah, you know the drill. So welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Ham's official Xenoblade Chronicles 3 wishlist. So to start off, here are some things I hope to see change with the core Xenoblade Chronicles formula. One of the biggest differences between Xenoblade 1 and 2 was that 1 had environments that connected to previous environments. There are some exceptions to the rule, but the majority of the world was connected in some way. Xenoblade 2 was a different story, because instead of exploring 2 massive monsters, you're exploring a bunch of slightly smaller moving monsters. So as a result, the world and areas don't connect to each other in the same way, you kinda just have to fast travel in between them. Because of the cool setting, I don't really mind this, but I do prefer 1's approach to progression. Xenoblade 1's world design rarely led to backtracking and established really strong forward momentum, which is nice. If they combine Xenoblade 1's progression and Xenoblade 2's superior level design, we're gonna have something truly special. You know, on the topic of level design, Xenoblade X is a game that rarely gets mentioned. Wonder why. This game has, hands down, one of the best seamless open worlds I have ever played, and I hope Xenoblade 3 does not implement this. Like, every single game these days is trying to establish seamless open worlds, and that's nice and all, but sometimes a game's world can actually feel bigger when some of it is left up to the imagination. Like, I don't need to climb that mountain out in the distance, I assume the world continues past that, because of course it does. Having a non-seamless open world allows for the smaller areas you create to be as masterfully crafted as possible, and that is exactly what Monolith Soft does best, I think. The last thing I want to see change from the previous games is the story structure. To avoid spoiling too much, both Xenoblade 1 and 2 have stories with very different themes but have events that mirror each other. This is a very intentional thing that they did, and I love it, but now that we know that 3 will be a direct continuation of both titles, I would like them to try something completely different with the weird-ass world they're trying to set up here. From the trailer, it seems that they're going in that direction, but it's also hinted that we might get some returning characters from previous games, and if that is the case, I hope it's kept to a minimum. If the story gets too hung up on showing us characters we already know and love, they'll end up outshining the new cast, and I don't want that to happen. Now, we've seen the whole playable cast of characters already, and they're all new faces, so I don't really have anything to worry about at the moment. So you better not give me a reason. I also hope that they make an effort to give every single one of the main characters the time of day and proper growth. One thing that I think all Xenoblade games stumble on is giving equal attention to all of the cast members. Alright, gameplay improvements. Let me change my character mid-battle. This is kind of self-explanatory, why can't I do that yet? Even as somebody who enjoys the whole gotcha blade thing that Xenoblade 2 had going on, I really hope it does not make a return. Mostly to avoid both controversy and potential frustration. Having gambling-like mechanics in games can really warp an unlucky player's perception of an otherwise great game, and that's obviously not a good thing. I also like the idea of leaving Xenoblade 2's unique mechanics unique to that entry. It makes it worth going back to more. A little bit of a small thing here, but could you consider letting me attack while moving again, maybe? On the topic of changes made in Xenoblade 2, I hope they return to the original chain attack system or something similar to it. The coolest thing about Xenoblade 1's chain attack system was that it was pretty easy to build up when playing well, and absolutely devastating when utilized effectively. The same kind of applies for Xenoblade 2, but the game had such a weird method of continuing the chain attack that it was really only beneficial to use in boss battles. Maps. Please, make a good map system. Every single game you make has a terrible map system. Xenoblade Definitive Edition admittedly has a decent map system, but I would love to see a better pin system with certain symbols you can place that aren't just red or blue. I would also appreciate a Breath of the Wild-esque waypoint system, because that's fantastic in any game. More than anything else though, I just want difficulty options. I'm currently playing Xenoblade 1 again, and the game is just so easy if you're engaging in any of the side content available to you. Definitive Edition introduced Expert Mode, but that doesn't really change much of anything. It just allows you to stop leveling up, and this game is not fun when you're under-leveled at all. Personally, I'm hoping to see Xenoblade 2's DLC difficulty menu make a reappearance, because that thing allowed for so much customization. Now, going back to the topic of characters, there's one thing I hope they avoid with this game, and it's something I'm worried that they're trying to implement, and that's a dual protagonist structure. Now, I've talked about Star Ocean's second story and why I love its dual protagonist structure. In general, it's a very ambitious thing to do, as it forces you to provide two different perspectives on the same narrative. What this generally means, though, is that narrative is going to be shorter than normal to compensate for this. Tales of Xillia and Scarlet Nexus are both good examples of short games made longer by the fact that the devs expect you to play through them twice. In general, I just don't like this approach. It's the one thing I'm skeptical of with the new Star Ocean. Can they pull it off? Probably. And in Xenoblade's case, I don't think that they should go for that approach, at least for a mainline title. Xenoblade games have incredibly long campaigns that span multiple arcs and dozens of hours. I completed Xenoblade Chronicles 2 at the 100-hour mark, and I still had most of the side quests to complete. Make what you want with that information. If that number's cut down to 40 or 50 hours because of split perspectives, there is no way they're going to be able to tell a story that lives up to its predecessors in scope and scale. Now, I'm not saying they're doing this, nor has it been confirmed, but they really seem to be highlighting these two characters more than the other four, so it is a possibility. I mean, look at the previous Xenoblade trailers. Xenoblade 1, Shulk is obviously the protagonist because he has the Monado, and that thing is flashing all over your gosh dang screen. Xenoblade 2 revealed Rex is obviously the protagonist because he's the only one that they show, really. Xenoblade X looked completely different than the final product. You know what? Let's actually scratch that one off the list. Even the listing on Nintendo's website describes these two as being the protagonists. That's plural. You know what? I think I might be freaking out over nothing. Yeah, that's kind of it. When you really think about it, all of the Xenoblade titles more or less follow the same formula, and it doesn't really seem like that's going to change too drastically, which is fine. Now that the series has 3.5 games under its belt with a long history before them, I hope the devs harness everything they know and pull out all of the stops. An awe-inspiring interconnected world, a deep story with a great cast of characters, different modes of transportation like from Xenoblade X, which has been hinted at so far, a godly soundtrack, top-tier visual design. All of this while ironing out some of the annoyances that have been present in the previous titles. Apparently the series was always planned to have this kind of crazy shared universe stuff, so they absolutely know what they're doing here. This game plans to take everything from Xenoblade 1 and 2 and just cram them together. I honestly can't think of a studio I trust more to pull off something like this, and on a side note, I think I'm losing sleep about this go right here. So maybe in the time before release, I'll make some more videos fleshing out my opinions on these games. Comment down below if that's something you're interested in. And as always, like and subscribe because my secret firing squad has you in their sights and ready to pull the trigger at my call. Yeah, that's right, you. I'm talking to you. Thank you so much for watching.